Hey, besties, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Bon Voyage Besties, your go to podcast for spending your money on more travel experiences. We're Rachel and Rosa, and today we're discussing one of our absolute favorite destinations, and that is Croatia, with its crystal clear Adriatic waters, charming stone towns, incredible food, and the perfect mix of history and laid back coastal life. And today we have a super special guest with us, Emese, a Hungarian travel writer and photographer who's been spending her summers in Croatia since 1996, having witnessed the country's post war transformation firsthand. She's developed a deep connection to its people, historic towns, and vibrant culinary scene. After more than 2 decades of returning again and again, she has truly gone beyond Croatia's surface. She's traded crowded resorts for authentic local experiences. Today, she's sharing how to see the real Croatia, from hidden gems to cultural insights you won't find in any typical travel guide. So, if you ever dream of visiting Croatia or want to experience it in a more meaningful way, then this episode is for you. So, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rosa. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, we're so happy to have you here. So I know I actually went to Croatia a couple of years ago. So my best friend, she lives in Portugal, and we were both celebrating our 40th birthday. So we wanted to go to like a new destination. And when we were doing our research, it was funny because a lot of the popular spots tend to be in Europe, at least like Italy and Greece, especially for us coming from like the US. But we didn't really see too many people going to Croatia, at least from like our inner circle. So we started doing some research. And when I tell you, I fell in love and I am so ready to go back. So I am super excited to listen in to this episode because I need to start planning my next trip over there.
I mean, this definitely, you've been there once and you fell in love at first sight. So I'm not surprised you are already eager to get back there.
Exactly. So I know you've been visiting Croatia since 1996, which I believe is amazing. So what first drew you there and what made you keep coming back year after year?
My first trip to Croatia was actually in Trogir. We spent a week there with my family. My dad's company rented an apartment within like a holiday resort, and it was like a good company perk that we could get, employees could apply. And then if they get accepted, they can spend a week there on a really low budget. It was like 1 year after the war ended. So it was, I'm guessing, win-win for the Croatian economy and the hotel as well. So they could like generate income right after the war. So the journey from Hungary to all the way to Trogir without any highways at that time, it was like over 8 hours. Like today, it would be in like 4 or 5 at maximum. So we like drove through these towns where the buildings were like still riddled with bullet holes. It was like we felt that it was like just the war ended and you can still see every detail and every small thing that happened during the time. So I remember Karlovac, it was especially affected. And we drive after like massive convoys of like peacemaker trucks, and it was not possible to overtake them because they were like 40 or something like trucks in one line. And I remember also that when we stopped, we were not allowed to kind of leave the pavement. We didn't dare to step on the ground because like there was a real potential that you find landmines. I don't know whether you know that or read about it, but like they estimated that over 1.5 million landmines was left in Croatia, and they only announced this March that they are mine free. So it
Wow.
was
I definitely did not know that before I traveled over there.
a lot of people. I mean, obviously they started with the touristic areas and the Mediterranean coast, and they kind of go from there. But they only announced it this March. So, I mean, I've been visiting to Croatia for quite some time now, but I only felt that first year, this particular post-war climate. But we were like super relieved when we finally reached Trogir, and because everything that was welcoming us, it was like completely different to the road. It was like really quiet and peaceful, and like it is typical for Croatia to have like rugged pebble beaches, like lined with pine trees. And it was like all that, but like without the crowds, in a sense that we were there wandering around, putting our picnic here and then spending some time there. and we hear the cicadas everywhere. My first thought was like, oh my God, this sound is so annoying. How will I ever sleep here? But like after a while, it was like, okay, this is part of Croatia, and it's kind of now like a white zone, a noise that like puts me into sleep. And like everything was like all the small details, the smell of the pine trees and the shades. Like you were right at the beach where the trees are. You can see the beach from the trees. And it was like, I don't know, it kind of became my gold standard. So whenever I traveled any other beaches around the world, my mind always jumps back to Croatian beach and like comparing the two. I never like white sand beaches because where are the trees? Where are the cicadas, the animals? And like there is no sound, just like sand. I mean, it was like it made such a deep impression on me as well. And like when I first went into Trogir, I mean, it's no wonder it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site because it's just a maze of like these glowing limestone buildings with like terracotta roofs and like shutters, and like everything was like really like glowing, and like everyone is like laid back because it's like, okay, no rush, it's hot out there, let's just grab a wine and I sit in the taverna and like, or grab an ice cream in the evening. It was like such a different, it was like my first time experiencing that kind of Mediterranean vibe. And like from today's, compared to today's standards, it was like really empty that time, so a handful of tourists really. And the streets were like, you could wander everywhere. There was shops, there was like restaurants, local people like doing their shopping, or like just kind of wandering around the promenade in the evening when it's no longer hot. So it was like the whole atmosphere, what was like really really kind of a deep peacefulness. It's kind of it's hard to kind of put into words, in a sense that all the small things together, you felt that it's like it's a peaceful, like really hospitable atmosphere. And obviously Trogir is no longer similar to what I experienced there, but Croatia in a sense hasn't changed for sure.
I love how you had like this contrast of an experience, right? Like you're driving there and you're passing these landmines, which I'm sure was a scary feeling, to now experiencing like the warmth. So I did have the pleasure of going to Trogir, but I went as a day trip. So we did like a boat trip there, and it was like our first stop. So we only had maybe about like 2 hours or so to really explore. But you're right, it's so charming. Like when you're first like docking into the marina, like you're welcomed by these beautiful buildings and the promenade. So I definitely need to go back and spend some more time there. And we went early in the morning, so we didn't see that many people, but I'm sure now they're probably getting a little bit more of that touristic boom into the area.
I mean, the locals came out in the evening, and so did we when we went there. After 6 or something, it gets really lively, and like everyone is out there. It's not that hot, but it's still warm because the stone is still kind of, you can feel that the warm is like coming out of the stones, and you can sit anywhere and you can have an ice cream, and like it's a must, you have an ice cream and
We
strolling
did
in
have
the
that.
evening. That you cannot
Ice
miss
cream's
that.
always a must.
Yes, it is a must. And like Croatians, I don't know whether you had like an experience, like a lot of ice cream shops have like these like really kind of silly, they make like silly jokes with the kids and like unsuspecting adults as well. I don't know whether you had that experience, but it always makes a little bit more fun. They are pretending to drop the cone, but they
Okay,
kind of
yes.
did not. Or like juggling with the ice cream, or like throwing it up in the air and catching it with the cone. I mean, kids and adults love it, and you will see that it's always a long queue, and the staff makes like these kind of jokes. If you
I love
haven't,
that.
you should seek them out. It's really fun addition to the trip.
Yeah, that happened to us in Split, actually. We went to one of the ice cream shops, and same thing, when they went to hand it to me, they acted they're going to fall, and I was like, oh no, my ice cream cone. And I love ice cream, so I'm like, listen, you do not play with my ice cream. But I love hearing, right, about how Croatia, like I said at the beginning of the episode, to me, it was a little bit more like underrated, like the other popular destinations within Europe. And the fact that you've been traveling here for such a long time, what are the biggest changes that you have noticed in terms of tourism?
I mean, the biggest change is definitely in terms of like positive change is like the infrastructure. They really invested in doing the highways, redeveloping like coastal towns and like parkings. And it was like really just to have a place for tourism to go to. Obviously, some places became more popular than, than they probably suspected, but like it's like Croatia is like a long, long stretched out country. And if you were like put it on maybe a US map, it was almost as high as Florida without probably Key West. But like if you want to go around, like even just visiting other regions, doing day trips, it was really hard. It was really tiring and like time consuming to do that. And obviously after the war, the European airlines kind of started back earlier, but like from the US, like the first direct flight, which is not to the capital, was in 2019. So up until then, you flew to Zagreb and then you have to take train, bus, car, whatever, all the way to Dubrovnik if you want to visit the famous spot. And it was just like really different now. So everything is more connected. Everything is like you can reach and you can do a day trip there. It's like in a sense, there is no limit what you can do in Croatia. But obviously, the what changed in a kind of negative way is that too many people realized how awesome Croatia is, and they got little. Some of the towns got busier. Probably prices are also higher, and there are more hotels. They're building more hotels and resorts, and like cruise ships also stop there, which kind of unloads massive number in one go. But I think that there is like Croatian coast is like so long. And there is like so many towns, cities, villages, and in a good way, they are the same. It's not just Trogir or Dubrovnik or Split where you can actually feel how a Croatian kind of Adriatic lifestyle is. There is like really kind of a lot of choices you can do all around Croatia. So I think after the tourism boom or after the war, that's what I like to kind of mention because you can now visit almost any village, country. They are really a city. It's really welcoming wherever you go.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like you said, the infrastructure there, I know when I went, we spent about 2 weeks. So we based ourselves half of the trip in Split and the other half in Dubrovnik, which we thought was the best like home base in order to do like day trips. But I remember one time my husband and I, we were going to go over to the Golden Horn beach, I think in Bol, and we missed the ferry. So then I noticed there was another ferry that was leaving. It was also going to Bol. And I was like, oh, I'm sure we could just go there and like make take like a water taxi or like a cab or whatever the case is. But we got there and we were actually on the opposite side of the Golden Horn Beach. There was no water taxis. There definitely was no taxi that were going to take us because it was going to take like almost like 2.5 hours just to get to the other side. So we just decided to stay in this particular area, which it felt secluded and like we had the place all to ourselves. And it ended up being like one of our best like day trips that we took out of Split because like you said, like it wasn't as touristy, it wasn't crowded, it was just like locals and like the food was amazing, the beaches were beautiful, and it was still super accessible day trip for us from Split. So I definitely believe that it's great because you can kind of visit these like off the beaten path destination and still feel like you're getting that authentic local experience.
Yeah, and I mean, the Gold Horn Beach especially is like, it looks amazing on the photo, but they are aerial photos. So when you are on the beach, it's not really, you don't really kind of see the shape or like feel the vibe. And then I think, in my opinion, at least, there are so many amazing beaches. So like, I wouldn't put like Bol for top one for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree because we ended up going the following day. We took the correct ferry and ended going to Golden Horn, which was beautiful and it was nice. But like you said, it was definitely very crowded, and you can tell that they were geared more to tourists and not necessarily like locals, which is great if you're kind of into that vibe because they had like beach clubs and a whole bunch of stuff there. But it was definitely very, very crowded. And I remember we couldn't even like find like a nice spot to like lay out in the beach or anything. And I tell my husband, I was like, yeah, yesterday was kind of a better day. And so sometimes those mistakes kind of lead you to to discover like these places that you never really thought about beforehand. So sometimes kind of straying away from those touristy areas are a plus. So what would you say are some other places that tourists can go to, especially if they're visiting Croatia for the first time, that are not necessarily like in Split or Dubrovnik?
I mean, obviously, a lot of like attention is around that southern area of Croatia, but my personal favorite is actually the Istria Peninsula. It's like right up north, really close to the Italian border. My favorite town in Croatia ever is like Rovinj. I think it's one of those little gems, not hidden anymore. I wouldn't say that, but in the city or like the town is like the whole town, the old town is on a peninsula. So wherever I go, wherever, whichever street you take, it all leads to the ocean or like the sea, sorry. And it's just like it's on the hill and the church is at the top. It was like so, I mean, it was like 10 years after I started vacationing in Croatia. So it wasn't like one of the first experiences. And then we went to Pula, we went to Opatija. There is also a national park in the middle and another one like along the island. It's such a compact region where you can do a lot within like and not driving long distances, and you can explore a lot of things and you don't have to stay in your car for a long time. I think if we are talking about something that is lesser known, I would definitely recommend the Istria Peninsula.
They all sound so dreamy. Like I'm telling you, I am so ready to book another trip. So, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, when I went initially, I was gonna go with my best friend, and then my husband kind of got FOMO, and he was like, "Well, I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, so maybe I should join this girls trip." So I was like, "Sure." So then I ended up going with him for like a few days, and then my friend met us there, and then her and I ended up staying for the rest of the trip, and then that's when her and I ended up going to Dubrovnik, and we got to kind of explore a couple of like different like islands outside of there. I personally like Dubrovnik a little bit more than Split. I did find like the old town to be a little bit more charming, but it was very busy and chaotic, I have to say. And we went during the month of like September, like early September. So it was still drawing, a pretty decent crowd. So like you said at the beginning of the episode, like, tourism, it has its plus, but it has its negatives too. So I think finding these like off the beaten path destination also helps contribute to like the local economy too.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a Game of Thrones fans, I'm guessing Dubrovnik and Split is pretty obvious things. Like you can't really walk in King's Landing any other countries or like visit marine or cars or like all these filming location. That's probably you have to hit those sites and those historic places if you wanna kind of experience that kind of vibe. So that's definitely I think a lot of tourists picking these towns. But if you kind of want just coming to Croatia for Croatia and without the jetting vibe, I would say that you would find these cities too crowded for you as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I know we kind of touched on a couple of things, but for someone planning their first trip, how can they avoid the tourist traps without missing out on some of the highlights?
Well, obviously, when you have the crowds, the businesses is kind of trying to utilize that in any way they can. So, like one of the obvious tourist traps, in a sense, is when you want to pick a restaurant and that's one of everyone's top of the list, okay, where is a good restaurant, and I would recommend like looking for konobas. It's like a traditional like Croatian tavern. They have really short menu, maybe just a board that is outside, and they're serving only local dishes. So when you see like spaghetti bolognese or pizza, that might not be a traditional konoba. I'm not saying they are not good, but if you really want to make sure, then you go for a restaurant that serves only seafood and these Croatian meat dishes like the cevap or a pleškavica. And I definitely would avoid restaurants when there is like someone standing right to the entrance and like, come here, come here. Like really good restaurants don't need those kind of usher. I always stay clear of those. And you can be surprised because some good restaurants are in the marina or on the main street. And obviously some konobas are in a smaller streets, a little bit like out of place locations, but not necessarily. So I would kind of pick a restaurant which is full for dinner or lunch with a short menu and only local dishes, and you probably will be good to go. I mean, grilled seafood and grilled fish is that what Croatia is known for. So my personal favorite is like the grilled sea bass. I don't think there is any fish that is more delicious than a sea bass, and they do it so well, and it's served with like just olive oil or garlic and parsley. I mean, you don't really need anything else. And if you see that on the menu, that's also a good indication that, okay, they know what's the best. In terms of historic sites, I think to avoid tourist steps, it's sometimes, I would recommend doing a little bit of research in a sense, not just like wing it when you're there. So for example, Split, when someone hears that Split's number one kind of site is the Diocletian Palace, a lot of people think of it as one building, but it's actually like, as you also seen, probably a whole historic quarter. And it has like 4 gates.
Yeah, it's
And
pretty big.
while everyone wanna pick one gate where all the parking places are or the buses stops, that's not the only entrance there. And the same happens in Dubrovnik, that most of the people wanna get into Dubrovnik through the Pyre Gate, when also where the buses stop. But there is like a little north, another one, the Buza Gate, which is like equally charming and equally amazing way to get in, but you don't have to queue or be stressed out with how many people are there. And then another like tourist trap is like usually when you want to go shopping, there is like a sea of like mass produced merchandise and vibrating keychains wherever you see, but you can really easily spot the authentic ones. They are really small shops focusing on just one product type, like just ceramics or just jewelry or just lavender product. They usually owned by local people, and if you get there, you can chat, you can talk with the owner, and it kind of gives the experience a little bit more depth than just buying a seashell souvenir, which I don't really really encourage or like. You probably see or seen like necklaces or like bracelets and small boxes decorating with like seashells and things like that. I think shells belong to the ecosystem,
I
and we
agree.
kind of leave it where it was, and like you wouldn't know whether it was like they picked it up empty or they scuba dived to get it, while some of them are really big, really impressive and long. I wouldn't kind of buy those souvenirs. I think they are in a sense tourist traps because you cannot verify that the product is actually from Croatia as well. So in all, I think there is like no like scam in a sense in Croatia like you wouldn't find in any other locations, but a little bit like being cautious, a little bit doing some preparation or some research before you go will go a long way.
And I agree with you, just touching on the food part. I know when I travel somewhere, I stay away from anyone who's trying to flag me into the restaurant, or if they have an extensive menu that has a ton of pictures on it. Because, like you said, the good places usually don't need that type of promotion. I know when I went with my friend, we were exploring in the old town in Dubrovnik, and my friend, she's from Portugal. So she's used to like amazing seafood. She loves grilled octopus. So we were like on the hunt for like grilled octopus. So we were like searching and we found like this really delicious like taverna. We went there where we met the owners, probably like maybe about 10 tables, and we went during lunchtime. We got chatting with him, and he was just like so fun and like lovely. We ended up going there like 3 times. And I told my friend, I was like, all right, the food is great, the service is great, but I think we need to kind of branch off.
You don't necessarily. I repeatedly go back to the same places because it has been a year since I last tasted something. So it's always like, okay, I'm here again in Croatia, so let's go to the usual because I want to do my usual grilled squid the next evening, like the grilled sea bass, and then the chevap, and like I have everything for all the days, and then it's already over.
Yeah, I know. I usually have like a list of places that I have to like go to. And normally, if it's a place where we have to make reservations, I try to do that ahead of time. But I found that a couple of places in both Split and Dubrovnik, there was like smaller, like mom and pop restaurants where they necessarily did not take reservations. So you needed to like line up. I remember there was this one place I really wanted to go to, and they opened at 5. So the review said get there maybe around like 4:30 to get in line. And we did. And the line was already like a 2-hour wait. So we're like, all right, let's try this again the following day. So we're like, maybe we'll go for lunch and it'll be like less crowded. So we were able to snag a seat on the second day. But I think like those places are like the best. And then you're also connecting with like the locals. I know when we connected with like the owner of the one restaurant, he was giving us all recommendations. Like my friend, she's a huge like football fan. So he was telling her, these are the best bars to go to in town. You ladies are gonna love it. And it was just such an amazing time, and getting to like connect with the local community. I feel like that's one of the best things about traveling, is having these like special experiences. So how can you say that travelers can connect more meaningful with locals when visiting Croatia?
I mean, I think many Croatian families has been hosting travelers for decades, definitely post-war. And if you stay in a family-run guest house or like a private accommodation, that will make your trips like really personal. I mean, they will tell you where to eat, which beach to visit, how to avoid the crowds, which is like tourist traps in that specific areas, where to buy the best local wine, and like where should you get your pastries and stuff like that. I mean, they are really friendly wherever I went. Whenever I had a questions, they always eager to help me. I've been staying at the same guest house in Rab Island for 5 years now because we just love the owners so much. We already booked in January our vacation for the summer, and she always like waiting us with a smile and with some homemade goodies or like a few tomatoes from her garden. Like on the first day, we catch up what happened since last year, like asking questions, like she shares her recommendations. It's like really personal, and it really makes me connect to that specific place in the island of Rob. And like it's really typical that Croatia, like sometimes multi-generations live together. So you see the grandpa or the grandma like tending to the garden or grilling outside. Obviously, there are some language barriers, but with that generation, but they are like, it's like an activity show and we're smiling
It's
and
like
like,
visiting family.
it's lovely. And they are so like, they are interested in you as well, and like tell me more, where are you come from, what have you seen in Croatia, what do you do. And it's like I kind of encourage everyone to kind of go outside of the city, even if you have like a base like Split or Dubrovnik. Just go to like a working farm or like a local vineyard, or just take a private tour with a local guide when you have the possibility to ask as many questions as you want. Like they will tell you a lot about how Croatians are living, and it's always nice. Especially as I mentioned, the konobas, they usually have like a local owner there, or the family runs this kind of establishment, and they are sometimes really. I know a lot of people, have to travel during the summer, but if you are there in autumn or the spring, these local owners have more time also to chat with you in the restaurants, while they are not experiencing the summer rush. And like as you asked before, what is like the big difference between like 1996 and nowadays? When there were no highways, there was like a conobas every half an hour along the road, and you will see that there is like a whole pig was roasting on a spit outside, and they are like family run places. You can rent a room there if you want to stop. But those places are really like how locals kind of interact with each other. The locals also dine in these konobas, but with the highways now, you're not leaving the highway and the konobas are not by the highway. So you have to make effort, but they're still there and they're still lovely. They stay still local and authentic. And it's a lovely way to connect with the Croatian culture and local people as well.
I really love listening to that story, especially the fact that you keep returning, right, to the same guest house. So that definitely speaks volumes, right? Because you know that you're going to get like this enriching experience. Again, it's like traveling back and like you're visiting like family. It just sounds so like heartwarming and a very special experience. And I think sometimes people kind of get this misconception like, okay, when I'm traveling to a new destination, maybe I need to stay like in a new hotel that's going to have all of these like luxury features. And if that's the type of traveler that you are, great. But I feel like sometimes being able to stay in a locally owned establishment is going to be much more enriching than staying in a, high end luxury resort. And you're still going to get a great service and doesn't mean that the quality is not going to be up to par.
Definitely. I mean, if you are family traveling with kids, sometimes the resort is like a more obvious, less stressful choice. And I've been to some of these holiday resorts and they are lovely. And if it's your first time there with a family, you want to make sure that you kind of get to know the place and you have the amenities. You have breakfast, lunch and dinner on the spot. So you don't have to necessarily research and a lot. I think that's also a lovely way to kind of spend time in Croatia for the first time. If you come back for the second time, that's definitely where you should a little bit more like branch out and like venture outside of the gates of a resort and to know a little bit the rural side or the coastal villages better. So like personally, I've been to resorts and I do recommend them as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I know we kind of touched on a little bit as far as visiting those like iconic coastlines. And for some people, like you said, they are stuck traveling during peak summer season time where the crowds, you just can't avoid them. So, how do you say are some tips that they can enjoy the coastline without the overwhelming crowds?
I think my number one tip would be that towns in summer is like scorching hot during the day, and you would wanna spend your day by the beach, by the sea. So I wouldn't pick an accommodation inside a historic town because they usually have the marina, they usually have the restaurants, but the beach might not be in walking distance. So you have to take your car or a bus or like walk in to the beach. So like my number one recommendation would be to kind of have an accommodation a little bit outside the famous streets or like the famous locations, somewhere closer to the beach or like a resort with the beach itself. Where you can spend the hot summer days by the water. When you get to the historic towns in the evening, like you don't have to worry, the sites will still be open. I mean, last year it was like after I think 8 o'clock in the evening when we climbed the clock tower in Rab. So they are still open because they know that it's really hot during the day and only day trippers are gonna be there. So my number one recommendation is try to stay longer in one place so you have a chance to kind of spend your time wisely in a sense that not like you have to push everything in one day and then you are off to the next city, but like spending, even if you want to hit multiple locations, like spending 2 3 days in one city or one location, I would definitely recommend. And then as I said, to avoid the crowds, if you manage to find a local guide or like talk to someone in the restaurant or in the guest house, like they will tell you where is the next small cove or like a quiet swimming pod, which is the area which is not more for locals. So hence they are love those parts and the tourist is not yet figured that out. So that would be my like kind of third recommendation or like third top things to say.
And that's a good tip because I know when I went, we went at the beginning of September and it was hot during the day. So for the first part of the trip, we spent some time in Split and we also stood like in the old town. So it was very hot, but we didn't mind because we knew that we were going to be doing like day trips. So it was just like a center location close to the marina. So it was accessible for us for what we intended to do. But when my friend and I ended up going to Dubrovnik, we made sure to pick a hotel that had access to like a beach because we knew we kind of wanted to have more leisurely moments in the morning where we're just like relaxing because it was pretty hot and this was still like early September. So definitely making sure that you are preparing and looking for accommodations that suit your needs as well.
And I mean, as I mentioned, Croatia is like a long country in a sense that there is like a real difference in temperature between north and the south. So, for example, Istria is like pretty north compared to Dubrovnik, and like there is like I usually kind of measure how hot one area is when the figs are kind of ripe and you can buy them in the market, and you have to wait longer in the north to buy those, and maybe it's already July and they sell them in the south already. So there is like real difference. So if you go during the summer and you might wanna go to somewhere which is less scorching hot like a desert, then you might wanna look into the peninsula or the islands like Krk or Rab or Losin. They are really lovely and they are a little bit to the northern side, so maybe not as warm as you would expect.
You're selling me. I'm like, I'm so ready to go back. Like, I felt like I only like scratched the surface during my trip. So I am so ready to plan another adventure.
And I mean, I haven't even told you my favorite day trip. Um, it's you have to hire a local guide with a boat and you go to an uninhabited island when no one is there. Because these small islands, we had one of the best memories I have. It was near Trogir. We had like a local Croatian, like I think he was like he was also like a fisherman, so he has this boat like he used it for fishing as well, but like he used it also for tourists. And we went to a small island with no one around, but there was like grill racks and like you can see that locals go there for like celebrating things or like just grilling like a family tradition. There was like only fig trees all the way in the island. And we were like, there, like just eating and grilling fish and went to snorkeling. And I talked to the guy for hours. And like we spent the day on this island, like completely on our own. And it was lovely. It was like one of my best memories. So if you can kind of catch a ride to somewhere like really, really remote, not in a sense of like distance because it was like 15-20 minutes from Trogir, but like far away from the crowns, you step into like your little own world, and it was just a really memorable experience to spend the day like that.
It sounds fantastic. I know, like I mentioned, we did a day trip that we booked the tour when we went from Split and we visited three different islands. And one of our stop was actually going to be in the area, I believe, like the Blue Lagoon. And our boat driver, he was like, all right, it was a group of us, maybe like 6 or 7 women. And he was like, do you ladies trust me? And we're like, yeah, of course, Ivan. And he was like, I'm going to take you to a place that's going to be just as beautiful with nobody there. And sure enough, he ended up taking us to this other area, which I have to kind of go through like my notes and find out the name of the location because it was beautiful. And sure enough, there were maybe like two other boats. When we passed like the Blue Lagoon area, there were probably like 10 or 15 boats at that time. So it was super crowded. And he ended up taking us to this other area where he kind of like set the boat there and like we were swimming. He had like wine and snacks for us. And it was such a lovely time. So I think also too, kind of going with like an open mind. Maybe you have an idea of things that you want to see and do, but just kind of wing it sometimes because you never know what you're going to discover. And it can turn out to be like one of the best experiences that you have.
Definitely, I agree.
So, what would you say if someone only has 1 week in Croatia? How would you recommend they structure their trip to get a more authentic experience?
Well, it is a really hard question since the reason people want to visit Croatia is so different. as we talked before, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you might have a different idea than a family with small kids. But like, since I live in also in the neighboring country, it is easy for me to say that, okay, stay in one location for a week. And like, I know I will be back the next year. So, but those flying from the other side of Europe or from the US, I understand that you would really like to kind of make the most out of your trip. So I could honestly say that 1 week fly by so quickly.
It
You would
does.
blink twice and
I
it's
was there
already.
for 2 weeks and I thought it was going to be a long time, and it did not. It was not long at all.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you visit during the summer months and if you are really interested in like kind of immersing yourself in the Croatian way of life, I would definitely recommend finding a private accommodation where you can meet with the locals and then use that as a home base, which is like close to a historic city or something, but like it can be your home base and like staying on the beach while it's hot and going to the city in the evening. And I definitely recommend like leaving time for boat trips and day trips because picking I mean, obviously you can do day trips to like famous locations as well, but you would be surprised because whichever village town you go to Croatia, they will show you 5, 6 different kind of day trips ideas they have. And obviously all of them is lovely. All of them is locally kind of local recommended by locals in a sense that you will find something else to do besides the beach. So I would say that try to find a home base and then and go from there. Like if you have only like 7 weeks, like get 2 home bases would be, I think it would be too tight and you would feel you are rushed to okay, I have just 2 hours here. The next 2 hours should be somewhere else. You know, Southern people and Mediterranean people is known for their like relaxing and like slow life and if you want to pick up that pace you can really only do it in one location.
Yeah, I definitely kind of agree with that as well because again, when I went, we were there for 2 weeks, so we may split in Dubrovnik, like our home base. And I felt for what we wanted to do and accomplish, it was perfect because it was accessible to check out the places that we wanted to, and it didn't feel overwhelming. I know one of the things that I've been trying to do a little bit more in my travel is just to kind of like plan less. So I do have more time to just kind of find these off the beaten path and just see like where the day takes me. So maybe I'll plan like 1 or 2 activities a day, if that, or try to stick to just like one. So that way I don't feel like I'm needing to rush from one place to another. I know you shared a lot of amazing places, and I'm telling you, I am like so ready to book another trip there because I had such an amazing time. But what would you say would be another place within Croatia that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the coast, but there is a whole other world beyond the coast, and my absolute favorite are the national parks. Obviously, Plitvice Lakes National Park is the most popular one and the most well-known one. It can be really hot again during the summer. I recommend personally, if you can travel there, go during the spring or the autumn, but like if you can, and if you have a home base close to any national parks, I would recommend visiting that. And kind of lesser known is the Krika National Park, which is my personal favorite. It has been my top one before Plitvice, and I'll tell you why. It's like a smaller national park. It is closer to Sibenik, like in the kind of middle center part of Croatia. And while Plitvice has all these lakes and boardwalks, Krika follows like a river with 7 major waterfalls. And the last one has 17 cascades. So it's like
Wow.
really amazing. And when I first visited the national parks, swimming was still allowed in in the last pool. There was a gap, like there was a huge rock, and there was a gap which is kind of splitting the waterfall into two, and you could like use that kind of gap to swim to the waterfall and go behind. It was like the current was like powerful, but it was still doable. I did it with my father, and I was like 13 or 14 years old. And I thought when I next went to Plitvice Lakes that you can swim in Plitvice. I mean, huh, that
Yeah.
should be like the number 2 national park then. Sadly, swimming is no longer around like in 5 years or something in the last 5 years, but like the national park is still, I think, a wonderful location, and it's something really different, like getting into the nature, and like it's gorgeous and amazing. And you can even sail with a sailboat all the way to the last waterfall. And that is just seeing it from there. I bet everyone would love that. And I have two other places I made a note of that I think they are lesser known, but they would be like an amazing addition, even if just a day trip. One of them is Imotski. It's like a huge blue lake, which was actually a sinkhole, but the town is at the top of the sinkhole, and the view from the fortress is just like unreal. And that's the highest point of the town, and you see the blue lakes and the cliffs all around. It's just like, and not a lot of people goes there, but it's one thing you should like. If you just Google some pictures for Imotski, you will see what I and the second one is Omish and the Cetina Canyon. I think a lot of people expect like standard beaches, but like in Omish, there is like a river and the sea that's kind of colliding in a sense. And there is like a huge canyon where you can go rafting and like canyoning. And it's like really beautiful, high cliffs, blue water, with amazing views if you are hiking at the top. So I think those two places is not on the radar for a lot of travelers, but I think they should.
They all sound lovely. I mean, I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm telling you, I'm like so ready to go. You've inspired me to just like book that trip because it all sounds amazing.
Despite I've been visiting to Croatia for quite some time, as we established, I still have new places to kind of explore. I still haven't been to all the islands or all the amazing sites. So Croatia can offer still something new to me, new for me, even though I've been there more than 20 times, if not more. So I would kind of recommend everyone is to kind of venture beyond the obvious, because they will find really lovely hidden gems.
I love that. And I know sometimes when you look at social media, especially like as a travel content creator, I'm always hung up with the power of either going to like a new destination or going to a destination that I already been to already. And I feel like sometimes there's like this negative connotation, like you have to, if you're a travel content creator, you have to visit new places because you need to like rack up new countries. But I love repeating places because, like you said, doesn't matter how many times you go to a destination, you can still visit some of your favorite parts, but there's always something new to discover. So there's nothing wrong with repeating a place that you know that you're going to love, but that you're still going to be able to find these new places to experience. Now, are you ready for some little rapid fire questions?
Yes, yes, let's
All
do it.
right. All right. So if you had to pick Dubrovnik or Split,
I would pick Split because I just love the Riva, the Marian Peninsula, and that it's a whole quarter of historic sites and buildings. It's just like a living, breathing historical town. I don't know. It's Split for me.
it definitely does feel like you're being transported back in time when you're walking around the old city. All right. Would you rather island hop or stay in one place?
Well, I would stay in one place, but it's just me. I totally get the kind of allure of island hopping. So if you haven't been to Croatia, I would say that you should pick island hopping. But for me, it's staying one place.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. I want to discover, especially like I know there was some like wine areas that I wanted to visit that we didn't get to go to. So there's like so many other places that I'm ready to discover and make a trip back over there. Now, would you rather northern Croatia or the Dalmatian coast?
Well, if we say northern Croatia is the northern coast, not necessarily the north. I mean, I haven't been to a lot of places north from Zagreb, like closer to the Hungarian border. So, but as I mentioned, Istria Peninsula is really an apple of my eye. I would pick north for this.
Amazing. I love that. So before we wrap up, do you want to tell our listeners where they can find you?
I am actually a freelance travel writer, so I'm usually on LinkedIn, but I recently started an Instagram, so they can find me on Instagram as well. It's my name, Emese Maczko, and I love to get connected to whoever loves Croatia as much as I do.
Amazing. Like I said, I know I am definitely ready to book that trip. So that is it for today's episode of Bon Voyage Besties. We hope this conversation gave you a deeper look into Croatia beyond the crystal clear waters and postcard perfect towns and inspired you to experience a more authentic side of this incredible destination. A huge thank you to Emma Chef for sharing her 20 plus years of insight from hidden gems to meaningful ways to connect with the local culture. If Croatia has been on your bucket list, if it's not, then definitely needs to be. We hope that today's episode inspired you to just go ahead and book that trip. So if you love the episode, don't forget to follow us, rate us, and review the podcast. It really helps us reach more travel loving besties. And of course, share this episode with the friend you love to take to Croatia. We'll see you next time with more tips, stories, and inspiration to help you spend your money on experiences and not things. Until the next one, bon voyage, besties.